Okay, we're in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. 1 Corinthians chapter 9. We were on verse 15. So let's read through the chapter again. And then we'll look there, probably 15 to the rest of the chapter. It says, I am not free. Am I not an apostle? I have not seen Jesus. Oh, I'm doing crazy things. Am I not an apostle? I have not seen Jesus our Lord. Are not you my workmanship in the Lord? If to others I am not an apostle, at least I am to you, for you are the seal of my apostleship in the Lord. This is my defense to those who would examine me. Do we not have the right to eat and drink? Do we not have the right to take along a believing wife, as do the other apostles and the brothers of the Lord in Cephas? Or is it only Barnabas and I who have no right to refrain from working for a living? Who serves as a soldier at his own expense, who plants a vineyard without eating of its fruit, or who tends the flock without getting some of the milk? Do I say these things on human authority? Does not the law say the same? For it is written in the law of Moses, you shall not muzzle an ox when it treads out the grain. Is it for oxen that God is concerned? Does he not certainly speak for our sake? It was written for our sake, because the plowman should plow in hope, and the thresher thresh in hope of sharing in the crop. If we have sown spiritual things among you, is it too much if we reap material things from you? If others share this rightful claim on you, do not we even more? Nevertheless, we have not made use of this right, but we endure anything rather than put an obstacle in the way of the gospel of Christ. Do you not know that those who are employed in the temple service get their fruit from the temple, and those who serve at the altar share in the sacrificial offerings? In the same way, the Lord commanded that those who proclaim the gospel should get their living by the gospel. But I have made no use of any of these rights, nor am I writing these things to secure any such provision. For I would rather die than have anyone deprive me of my ground for boasting. For if I preach the gospel, that gives me no ground for boasting, for necessity is laid upon me. Woe to me if I do not preach the gospel, for if I do this of my own will, I have a reward, but if not of my own will, I am still entrusted with a stewardship. What then is my reward? That in my preaching I may present the gospel free of charge, so as not to make full use of my right in the gospel. For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became as a Jew, in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though not being myself under the law, that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessings. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives a prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. Okay, so we're up on 15. I did some more digging on what Tim and I, didn't you ask me, we were talking about the priest eating of the stuff last week. I read Kaufman, and Kaufman said that all priests eat of the sacrifice, pagan and Jewish. So he combined the two, where whether it was pagan or Jewish, no matter which one it is, they both ate the sacrifices. And so, this commentary seemed to think that it was more pagan because of all the idol worshiping in the city. Make sense? Yeah. Okay. I didn't, because it kind of puzzled me too, because when I went back and looked at it, or thought more about it, I was like, well, we're talking about the law, we're talking a lot about all that kind of stuff. To keep it in context, you would have to say that was in there too, the Jewish eat.
Yeah. The word holy is, meat separated unto God now, meat separated unto an idol. Just
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of mention that real quick before we get into 15. So, okay, so, verse 15. So it says, I made no use of any of these rights. So what rights are we talking about? Well, last week we were talking about the rights to get paid for preaching the gospel, to proclaim the gospel, for the Corinthians to support, kind of like a church would support a preacher. He had the right to, for the Corinthian brothers, to pay him to go out and teach the gospel in that city. He didn't want that, and so we'll see more of that in a minute, and why. I'm sure he was getting supported by somewhere, or he could have been just working for a living, but to make some money there. So anyway, the reason he was doing all this, as we'll see several times in this section, is that he wanted to save souls, and as we think about saving the souls, if he was asking them for money, he would be just like the rest of I forget what they're called, not priests, but rest of the teachers, philosophers in Corinth, which would demand money from people when they teach them. And so he didn't want to be like them. He wanted to be different so that he could reach more people. And so that's kind of what his reasoning for not wanting a money or whatever substance from them. I did a couple of searches, and I thought this is interesting. Just a couple of things I wrote down. It did not matter to Paul what he was getting paid. He does it because of his thirst for souls and not for a salary. Because of this, it is more of a necessity than a choice. And it was a necessity not based on to getting paid. It was a necessity based on doing what the will of God is. And so that to him, that was a necessity, not a living. Here another point: philosophers in Corinth must take what is offered to them, or not must as in they must do it, but this must have been what was going on. The philosophers in Corinth take what is offered to them and may even demand more. And so Paul didn't want to be put in the same category with them. There may have been some skeptics in Corinth that wanted to see if Paul would take more money if they offered it to him. Maybe there were some people there that were trying to make him look like the rest of philosophers in the area in Corinth. And if he took money, what would that do? That would make him look bad. And so he's trying to reach people, and he doesn't want all that to get in the way. I also did some searches about the richest pastors in the I suppose the United States. I don't know, but Kenneth Copeland makes $300 million to $760 million. So what does that do for preachers whenever people see that? They would not be, it would kind of turn them off. You see what I'm saying? David Oyedepo, I think, $150 million to $200 million. Joel Osteen, $100 million. I don't know some of these. T.D. Jakes, $20 million to $150 million. Chris Oyaka Himo, $50 million to $60 million. But when you think about these people that are wealthy and they're evangelical, they're getting all this money, but are they really, it just makes preachers look bad whenever people get those preachers, not really the gospel, but preachers preaching Jesus gets that kind of money. Make sense? Yeah.
In Acts, when Paul first came to Corinth, we read that he ran into Priscilla there, who were of the same trade. Verse 3 says, because he was the same craft, he abode with them, so he had a place to stay and wrought, for by their occupation they were tent makers. And then he would reason in the synagogue when he first got there every Saturday. He
was thinking I remembered that he was a tent maker, but I wasn't sure. So,
Yeah. And then when his crew got there, Timothy and some of the others, then he went full-time,
Yeah.
working in there in the gospel.
Yeah. All right, so I said, but I have no use of any of these rights, nor am I writing these things to secure any such provision. He's not asking them, he's not telling, like whining to them, saying that he needs money, or it's not that he's asking them for this money. He's trying to use it as an example to what he's trying to tell them here. It says, for I would rather die than have anyone deprive me of my ground for boasting. I mean, he doesn't want to try to boast about this. It's not about boasting. This word boast, it's kind of when we think of boast in our modern language, we might think of arrogant or gloating or disposition about one's possessions, skills, or their influence. That's not what it means here. Here in this word, it means redeeming aspects, meaning something similar to like self-respect. He doesn't want this provision. He wants to have respect of people, and so it means a little bit different than what we think of the word boast. If we think of our word boast, it means it's kind of negative annotation. Yeah.
Elsewhere, the Apostle Paul did accept money. He said, I robbed other churches that he could serve them.
Yeah.
So evidently, a lot of this motivation comes due to the city.
Yeah.
And
maybe, I mean, it could have been that he had enough.
because he wasn't against taking money from churches.
Right,
He said,
yeah.
I did it.
Yeah.
But he didn't want this congregation to use that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think it might say that a little bit further down here. I'm not sure. I did read it here in somewhere. For verse 16. Let's see. He doesn't want to do any harm to the cause of Christ. He doesn't want anything to get in the way of teaching people the gospel. And so he apparently thinks that, and it probably was true, that if he was accepting money from the Corinth church, that would get in the way of some people's acceptance of the gospel or whatever, or him being able to teach to them. Verse 16, it says, for if I preach the gospel, that gives me no ground for boasting. For necessity, and that's self-respect, for necessity is laid upon me. Woe to me. So here we see again the word necessity. It's here in the commentary, he used the word compulsion. That may be what's in King James or another version, but I put a question here: do we preach for money or for Jesus? We preaching the gospel or are we preaching for money? I think there's a lot of people out there that are preaching for money because they don't really seem to care what the truth is, and they just and they preach, and a lot of it's false. But Paul didn't want people to think that he was preaching for money. If I preach the gospel, that gives me no ground for boasting, for necessity is laid upon me. Woe to me if I do not preach the gospel. So it's important to him to preach the gospel. His mission was given by Christ, and he was compelled to preach. And here at 17, it says, for if I do this of my own will, I have a reward, but if not my own will, I am still entrusted with a stewardship. So he's preaching out of his own will. It's his own, his motives are pure. He's not trying to, I mean, I was thinking about it earlier, it's like, it'd be almost like going up, hand me $10 and I'll teach you the gospel. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't like that, but I don't know why I thought about that earlier, but he didn't want anybody to think that he had any other motives other than love for them and to preach the gospel. For I do this of my own will, I have a reward. When you think about this reward, there's a little bit of, when you think about a reward, what kind of reward is he talking about here? Is he talking about a spiritual reward? Are we rewarded on all the things that we do? Is it a physical reward then? The commentaries seem to, and I thought this is kind of interesting, that he was rewarded because he was able to save souls. And that was, when you think about this whole picture, him not accepting a sum of money to preach the gospel, he's getting rewarded, not rewarded spiritually, but he's rewarded by being able to teach the Corinthians. And so that's kind of the idea that the commentary had. Many commentators have trouble with this passage, reconciling the concepts of reward and grace. And so that's what this commentary said. He's doing it for the greater good because he had concern for the brethren. Any comments on there? Another commentary, or another sentence here, he had labored out of duty and obligation to the master whom he loved. So him preaching the gospel, it's not for money, it's because he feels obligated to Jesus whom he loves to preach. He was seeking the reward other than money, other than a heavenly reward, and that's what was placed in his hand. His reward was being able to save those souls, and that was enough reward for him. Make sense? Any comments? What then is my reward? That in my preaching I may present the gospel. So here's his reward. And we were talking about it up there. I have a reward. What is his reward? So he asked the question, what then is my reward? Here it is. That in my preaching I may present the gospel free of charge, so as not to make full use of my right in the gospel. So his reward was to be able to present the gospel. And that's what his whole goal was to do. Okay, verse 19. It says, for though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. And so, if he got paid by maybe the church there, he would really be their servant, kind of. He's trying to be the servant of the master, servant of Christ. So here he's there. In this section, he's talking about Jews and Gentiles, and he's going to go down through each one of those. So here's who he's going to win. It says, to the Jews, I became as a Jew. So whatever he could do to be able to teach them the gospel, circumcision, there's other things that Jews do, go to their synagogues, whatever he had to do, he's going to go there to win the Jews. He's not, and it says to those under the law, so those that were under the Old Testament law, I became as under the law. So he was kind of doing those kind of things because he wanted to be able to talk to them. But it says there in parentheses, though not being myself under the law. He's not really under the law. He's just doing those things to try to be able to get into the synagogues or whatever they're doing so that he might talk to them, that I might win those under the law. Teach the gospel, those under the law might be saved, right? Verse 21, to those outside the law. So I suppose that would be Gentiles. I became as one outside the law, not being outside the law of God. There's still a law of God, right? He's going to say here the law of Christ. So he's still under the law of Christ, not completely free of law, just because he's not under the Old Testament, under the old law, that I might win those outside the law. Let's see if I have anything, other comments here. His objective in ignoring ceremonial aspects of the law in the company of Gentiles was to gain souls for Christ. That was the same objective with the Jews. He kept ceremonial observances with the Jews so he could win more Jews. And so it just, he kind of did what he needed to do to try to teach the gospel. And we get down here further, where was that at? Is it down there?
I think on some of this, Doug,
Yeah.
a lot of times people say, well, or want to look at that and say, well, you're changing who and what you are. He wasn't changing himself as a Christian.
No.
He was using his experiences to relate to people.
Yeah.
He was relating to them in that way. Not that he was acting and worshiping as a Jew or being as a weak Christian or.
Yeah, I don't think he was in there worshiping and
Yeah.
doing things. He was.
Yeah.
He was just. It seemed. It kind of makes me think. I don't know. I went to whenever I was a long time ago. I went to it was a graduation thing. Anyway, they were singing Christian songs and they had a piano in there and stuff. And it's like I didn't feel comfortable singing. Well, what does that make me look like? Does it make me look like a non-Christian? Should I be singing just because they're singing so I don't look like a heathen or whatever? You see what I'm saying? And it kind of, I don't know why this made me think of that, but anyway.
Well, I think some people go to the extreme.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't become an alcoholic to teach alcoholics.
Right. Yeah. And he says that. I was trying to look. He says that in here. I don't remember where it is, but it says he's not going to become an adulterer to be, or something like that. Where did it say that? I don't know where I read that at, or maybe it was a scripture somewhere else. Let's see. Oh, here it is. 22. Oh, this is Ben Witherington 3 pointed this out. He said it does not say that he became an idolater to idolaters. So he didn't become an idolater to go in there and be able to teach them. That's kind of what you're saying. And he didn't become an adulterer so he could go in and talk to adulterers. We're not going to become a drunkard so we can go in and talk to those that are drunk. That's kind of what you're saying there. And that's he had that written under verse 22, which says, to the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all things I might save some. And so you could really take that out of context and throw it like you were saying, and take it way out. What I was thinking as I read that verse 22 and studying, I thought of the Philippian jailer as he was in jail and sitting in jail. He became a prisoner so that he could teach someone. So I mean, God could have not made him, could have rescued him out of the prison. He could have not even been there. You see what I'm saying? So he became a prisoner. That's kind of what I took from this. So he could teach somebody. I mean, they were singing in there, and so I think I think that's a pretty good example of what he's talking about there. Yeah.
Yeah. think too, it's good to remember that in the infancy of the church, the whole law of Christ had not yet been legislated.
Yeah.
In other words, as time went on, the apostles continued. We've got the letter, we got the complete revelation. But in the beginning, it's like, I think a great example of what we're talking about is Acts chapter 21, when Paul goes back to Jerusalem and he gets with James. And I'll just start verse 18. It said, in the day following, Paul went in with us unto James and all the elders present. And when he had saluted them, he declared particularly what things God had wrought among the Gentiles by his ministry. And when they heard it, of course, they glorified God and said unto him, thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are all zealous for the law. But anyway, we know the story. He went on to tell them to make a vow, in other words, to do Jewish custom, so that because the Jews that believed that were in Christ hadn't come over completely over, they were still following the customs
Yeah.
of the Jews.
Yeah, that would have been a major problem at this time.
It was a major problem at that time, but they did it in a soft way. In other words, they didn't just cut people off from all their customs and traditions. But as we now have this, which came along, through the passing around of the letters, then those things had to be put away.
Yeah.
Eventually, but not in the beginning, because it would have.
Yeah, well, it's not a switch you turn off and on.
Right, yeah. In other words, the church wasn't born in a vacuum. It was certainly born at Pentecost. But the whole law of Christ wasn't enforced until years and years later.
Yeah. All right, so here he says, I do it all for the sake of the gospel. So everything he's doing is the reason he's doing all this, the reason he's not accepting money, all of this is for the gospel, that I may share with him and its blessings, and the blessings we receive from the gospel, so we know what those are. Okay, any comments on verse 23 or before? Okay, as we think about verse 24 and the rest of it, this is talking about a race. And so as we think about the races, I think we have to think about what kind of competitions were going on at this time. And so if you remember, the Olympiads and the Greek Olympians, they started about 700 years, a little over 700 years before this time. And so they were used to races. And so they knew when Paul started talking about runners running and receiving a prize, they were going to know what he was talking about. These athletics were extremely popular first century. They had regular intervals of competitions, annual competitions. These champion athletes, they toured the cities and towns, just kind of like what champion basketball, football players do. They're all touring. They erected monuments in their honor. It would be like a famous basketball player or somebody. We all know who it would be, right? And so that would be, these Olympians would be that famous. Young men sought the glory of being an athlete. Just like people today, they want to grow up and be a famous basketball player, football player, whatever. Many young people now dream of playing professional sports, and even the spectators are enthusiastic. A lot of people go watch sports games. And so there was a lot of people then that went and watched those games as well. There's other passages in the Bible, Galatians, Philippians, 2 Timothy talks about these games and these prizes, or prize. Actually, remember, if you look there, it's singular. It's not multiple prizes. Today we have first, second, third prize when you have basketball or football or whatever it is. Our kids, they all get a prize, right? That wasn't so with these Olympian games. The only prize, there was one prize that they were given. What would you think it would be? You think it would be a gold medal, silver medal? No. It was a leafy wreath that would soon die. That's all it was. And so these Olympians would participate in these games to receive this leafy wreath, and that's all they got. Today probably receive all kinds of extra things, money from advertisements and just you name it, gold medal, silver, all those other kinds. So here we see that he says, do you not know that in a race all runners run? So we got all runners running, all these Olympian runners running, but only one receives a prize. What's that prize in Olympian? It was a what? Leafy wreath, right? You might think of the leafy wreath we put on the front door, right? At Christmas. Some people put a wreath out there. It's got leaves on it. Okay, so run that you may obtain it. So what he's telling us here is work hard. Do whatever it takes to win the prize. That one prize. That's the one prize. That's all they get. I just kind of always think this was compared to heaven. But I don't think it really is here. I think it's a little bit more than that, or different. This word Stephanos is the Greek word, I believe, of this prize that was awarded. Paul was not comparing the Christian reward to a jeweled crown. He was comparing it to, or something that a king might wear. He's comparing it to this wreath that fades away, that dies, right? That wilts. Okay? So to run this race and win that prize, you have to have a lot of self-discipline. There was a friend of mine that ran a marathon, and he worked and worked and worked for months trying to practice and be prepared to go do that marathon. He finished. A lot of people don't finish the marathon at all. It was his goal to finish, not to win, but just to finish. It is brutal. But here we see, he continues on, so run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. So whenever we think about this athlete, what does he have to be able to win this prize? He has to have self-discipline. He has to practice and work hard. And if he's going to win that. They do it to receive a perishable wreath. That's that perishable wreath. Remember we said they're not getting silver and gold, bronze medals. They're getting this little leafy green wreath, which hardly seems worth it, the work that you have to put into it. But that's what they were getting.
I remember years ago when I was in college, on one occasion the coach visited the athletic dorm and found a number of the participants smoking. Well, that is really a no-no because it cuts short your breath and so on. But I thought that was rather ironic. It's his job to play the role of a detective.
Yeah. He talked a lot about a foot race that they've been doing that for many, many years, contests, marathons. But any of those races that you're going to be in, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of self-control. And if you think about self-control, here it talks about in verse 27, I discipline my body. Well, you're disciplining your body, right? You've got to exercise, be ready, and keep it under control. This under control is self-control. Galatians 5, 22 and 23. Remember those? The fruit of the Spirit. Self-control is one of those. There was, I hate to not finish, but another interesting thing about Olympians, they would go a year ahead to go get ready for a race. And they would go there and they would be on a strict diet and exercise. I thought that was really interesting for a year to try to compete in these races. Okay, we'll finish up there, last couple of verses next time.